Can people hear me all right? No, that's not wrong. No, yeah, there we go. Excellent. So, welcome to the afternoon of Drupal Camp Ottawa. How many people here are familiar with accessibility? Most people. So anyone here who's not really all that familiar, who's like a newbie, who's like consider themselves like just entering the field? Okay, also excellent. So first of all, thank you to the sponsors and volunteers. It's very important to run events like these. Thank you so much. Toufic and I are doing a presentation on Accessible by Design, a hands-on guide to inclusive web experiences. And we are Toufic and Mike.
Toufic and Mike.
Excellent. We were both involved in organizing this conference. Ali Yao, we're wearing the t-shirts from the event. And there is an accessibility unconference community in Ottawa that we're very involved in, except it hasn't been very active lately because, well, COVID and then other things.
But I have some good news though.
Okay. And
there's people that are interested to revive this. And actually, this is not scripted. This is live. I'm just telling it right now.
Woo woo! Okay, marvelous. So to get a hold of us, you can reach us on LinkedIn. There you go. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about inclusive web experiences, what it is, and why it matters. So what does accessibility mean? What does it matter to you? What are some benefits and carrots, and also what are the sticks? Accessibility is, it does not mean that you are 100%, you got a 100% in your Google Lighthouse score. That's useful, but it's not sufficient. In fact, it doesn't even just mean that you meet WK2 or WK 2.1 or WK 2.2. That isn't the definition of accessible. Those all matter. Those matter for standards compliance. Those are best practices that are codified into a means to try and evaluate them. But that doesn't mean that your site is accessible. It just means that it meets these guidelines. Accessibility means that people can perceive, operate, understand in real-world environments the digital tools that you're providing to them. So people with disabilities can independently use your interface and engage without barriers so that they don't need to go off and ask their neighbor if they can't read the screen. Or if you go outside on a sunny day, you can read your phone and navigate to where you're trying to go because it is being built for real-world situations. So why does it matter for you? So about 1 in 4 people has a disability. How many people here have more than 4 friends? Okay, so statistically, you have somebody in your social circle who has a disability. You may or may not yourself, but chances are somebody in your close social or family circle does. The other thing is that how many people here have allergies? Okay, same here. Allergy season. There's all sorts of things where at this time of year, when the flowers start budding, that our eyes start watering. Our eyesight isn't as good now as it was, at a time when there's no life at all, and we're sort of sitting in a frozen Ottawa winter. What about how many people here wear glasses or contacts? Okay, again, that's a type of assistive technology device. That's a way of engaging with the world. And if you didn't have those glasses on, if you lost them or misplaced them, or if you're between prescriptions, that's a place where, again, at times you're going to be, you may not think of yourself as having a disability, but it is a type of disability, and there's going to be times when you don't have your glasses, where you need to read the screen. Increasingly, accessibility is becoming a measure of quality. So, what does it mean to do a good job? And I also go off and remind people that you don't actually know if the people you're engaging with, in person or on Zoom, have a disability or not. I can tell if you have glasses, but I can't tell if you're colorblind or if you have dyslexia. So our assumption about who has a disability is very much stereotyped by this idea of somebody in a wheelchair, somebody who's clearly wearing blackout glasses, or uses a cane or has a guide dog. We have these stereotypes about what it means, but the reality is it's much broader than that. So accessibility benefits everyone. It helps your clients because it helps them serve the people that they're trying to serve. It also helps your organization, your institution become future compatible. So AI loves accessible code because it's semantic code. There's meaning built into it that it can extract out in order to have a better understanding, to have a richer experience about the content that you're conveying. It's about communicating, trying to make sure that the meaning that you're trying to create as an author is conveyed to somebody. So how do you manage that process? And if you're able to do it for AI, you should also be able to do it for people with disabilities. We're using assistive technology and other devices to be able to consume that content.
Can I just say?
Of course.
Actually, it's interesting you're talking about AI as well and accessibility, how benefit, but a couple of years back we used that exact same analogy with responsive design came in place. And before AI and before responsive design, accessibility were there. And that's another set of benefit for developing something that is truly accessible. It was proved that it's helped with responsiveness, and now with AI, we should be at the start of making everything accessible for all the reasons we're describing. But if you, I don't want to say that, but if you don't care about accessibility, but you do care about AI, you cannot not take care of accessibility to settle.
So it's about designing for people who live on a finite planet, and there is a people have disabilities. It's part of the human condition. When we're little, we have disabilities, whether it's just not being able to walk correctly or not be able to ride a bike. When we're older, we also have disabilities. If we're lucky enough to grow old, we will also have disabilities because it is just a part of the human condition. We all face temporary, situational, and variable disabilities, and I've talked about those a bit as well. It is also the law. The Accessible Canada Act came in 2019, and if you work for a federal agency or a federally regulated agency, you need to now be thinking about EN 301549. How many people here work for a federally regulated agency or for the federal government? Okay, not for long though. You have to meet these guidelines, and so many people in Canada have not even heard of EN 301549. Probably more Canadians are familiar with the Section 508 standard and the Americans with the Disability Act than they are with the Accessible Canada Act, just because of the nature of things. There's also the Ontario's with Disabilities Act in 2005, so that's existing legislation that if you're operating in Ontario, you need to think about. And finally, the European Accessibility Act. If you are working for a company that is exporting content or information to the UK, this is another guideline that you need to be aware of because, like many European regulations on the internet, they're taking a global stance to this. Just like the GDPR, it's very much tied to that global picture. And with now, I think I'm ready to pass it over.
Thank you. All right. So now, Mike did a great job to convince you accessibility is important, right? We all agree on that? We're there? Okay, perfect. Now, how we do that? Well, it's easy. You can add one line of code for $5.95 per month, and your page will be accessible. Do you believe me? Well, people make tens of millions of dollars by making people believing that, which is obviously not true, right? So,
I've got a bridge for you. Like the Brooklyn Bridge, how much I can sell it to you for cheap.
Yeah, and it's there, and we that's probably another time. Now, that being said, like how we test for accessibility, obviously. So there is a bunch of tools. You will hear about tools, which is great, but there is no tool out there that will test for everything accessible. And what Mike mentioned, if you use any of the tools that give you a score of 100%, it does not mean you're 100% accessible. What that means is your product passed 100% the test that this tool actually do. And here's another thing before we start talking about it. I was working for, there's a website that was tested. They came back, said, we passed one of the tools at 96%. Like 96% is great. It's like an A+ if you're at the college or university, right? But then again, Okay, regardless of this is not test everything accessible, it's only 96% of the test that that tool do. The actual point is 4% is not accessible. And that is high enough to break the experience of the user. And in this specific case, actually, do you know what the error is? It was navigation from one section to another section. So all of the modules were accessible by themselves, but you cannot go from the login page to go to any of the other pages. So technically what this makes is your product is 100% not accessible. So what I want to show you today is divided that in 3 groups: automated testing, manual testing, and guided assessment or guided tested, and what that means, and hopefully show you some examples. So automated tools is a tool, again, that you can put a URL, or it's a plugin, or anything like that that you can add to your development lifecycle that can run a series of tests and it give you a score. So there is a bunch of them. Manual testing is, what it's mean is manual testing. You look at the page, you ask yourself a series of questions, and then you test that manually. An example, if I have an image needed an alternative text. That's very basic for accessibility. If you run a tool, the tool can tell you if there's an alt, yes or no. But the tool cannot tell you if that alt is actually describing what the image do or not. So then you will need to manually look at that alternative text and see, can that text replace the actual image? So that's what the manual tests do. And there's a bunch of that, we're gonna look at them. Guided assessment, this is my favorite tools actually. So those tools that instead it gives you a way that you can run a URL. It will tell you I was able to test the following, for example, language of the page. I'm able to figure out there's a language of the page there, so that's a pass. But here's a series of stuff that I cannot test, or I can test partially, but here's the step-by-step that you need to follow to do it. So in a way, you don't need to remember all the guidelines, all the steps, and so on. So if you're new to accessibility, you can simply follow these tools that tell you, like if we're talking about images, it will tell you, okay, I looked at the images, there is one image without an alt. That's an error. But here's a series of images. Look at them, because it may be descriptive, may not be descriptive. Some tools are a little bit smarter. They will be able to identify if the alt is image, or if the alt is the file name, for example. But if you have an actual description, you need to manually check that. So if you look at the tools, so here's an example, and I picked a company that, you know, the owner don't believe a lot in accessibility, I guess, or fire lots of people that do accessibility. So this is Wave by WebAIM. So it can be as a plugin or a website where you put the URL. And what we see in the screen here is in your right side, you'll see the website with some icons all over the page, and on the left is a summary of what happened in there. So this is the Tesla homepage. Just running that right away, it tells me there's 11 error, 25 contrast error, and so on. Then this is a kind of step that helped me know that there are issues. So right away, I don't need to do any further testing. I know that at least there are 25 errors on that homepage to start with. Also in this automated tool, for example, you see the different tabs. In the left side panel, we have detail, but you can look at the order, which is the order of the navigation, the structure of the page, so you know if you skip levels and so on. So it shows you all that visually in the page without the need of an actual download for a tool or something. So if you're working, again, there was lots of folks working for the government, so sometimes if you wanted to install a tool, you need to go through IT security and so on. So this is a simple URL that you can run, and I think you can run it from your phone as well, if I'm not mistaken.
I think yeah, you can run it from the page itself. Right? Yeah. So manual testing, I think this is where we're going to spend a little bit more time, because it's stuff that you need to do yourself. So with the manual testing, I broke that in 3 categories. We have keyboard testing, visual testing, and content testing, or content check and visual check. So when it's come to the keyboard, anyone use any devices to test for accessibility? No one?
That's exactly the answer, yes. Anyone not using keyboard? They're only mouse users? No? We'll all use keyboard. So keyboard testing is a device to test for accessibility. Because this is how lots of assistive technology will be working. If you're able to operate your page with the keyboard, that means the assistive technology, there's a big chance that they're able to operate as well. So what you need to do is when you open a page, you tap, 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 control, tap, tap, tap on the page, and you kind of tested 5 or 6 different success criteria. There was a session before lunch, and the person went through each of the success criteria, which was great. But by the fact just tapping there, you will find out, do I know where the focus on the page? That's one success criteria. Is the order of navigation is correct? That's another success criteria. If there is anything that happened when an element received focus, that's another success criteria. Do I have skip to main content link? That's another success criteria. Is the focus range, color contrast visually enough, and so on. So this is kind of test that you can do only with your keyboard right away. And that's an easy test to do. That doesn't require any additional knowledge than being a user that uses the keyboard all the time. Also another test that you can do when you're doing with the keyboard, if you get stuck in one location, and this is what we refer to as a keyboard trap. So if you get stuck in one section, so if you're using assistive technology and you cannot leave there, you just need to go click with the mouse somewhere outside. So imagine that someone don't have access to that mouse, now they are stuck with that. So again, of course, that's a summary of the keyboard, but again, each of the success criteria need to be looked at when we do a full assessment, but that's a very good start to look at. When visual check, we look at color contrast, for example, that the tool did not cover. We saw the Tesla page that had some color contrast, but the tool sometimes they will look at like text and background color. But sometimes, and I'm very sure you saw that if you have a text, for example, and the background is an image. So when you scroll up and down, that image location change, so the color contrast will change based on how you are scrolling. So the tool don't look at every single instance of these text and background. So this need to be done manually. We can look at the page, see if stuff look like heading. Again, with the talk earlier before lunch, there was a bunch of memes that were amazing. I don't know if that person in the room, but if not, I want to meet them after the meet. She's there?
She's here, yeah.
Oh, hi, sorry, I didn't see you. So again, if you look at the page and we see a heading, but they are not heading. So this is not an additional feature to make your things accessible or your product accessible. Is actually code to specification. A heading is an H1 to an H6. It's not font, size, bold, color, and so on. So again, if you code to specification, you're already a step further for accessibility. And the demo that we're going to look at will show those. Yeah, can you just go back to visual? Yeah.
Visual, sorry.
Just one back up. Yeah, here.
Visual checks. Audio checks.
Visual check.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Because I know there's flashing. Talk about flashing here? Yeah, okay. So we'll look at some flashing thing. Unless you have a tech company and you're evil, like this is not stuff that happen, and what you want is to harm people, then you can use these kind of technology, flashing thing, and so on. Any Pokemon fans in the room? Yeah? Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Yes. Yeah? All right, perfect. So that's a great example. Another one, a little bit more recent, the movie The Incredibles, the second one. Anyone saw it? Yeah? What happened when you went to theater? There was a disclaimer at the door. Be careful, there's some animation that can cause photosensitivity, can cause seizure for people with photosensitivity. I walked in, I don't have photosensitivity, but then I looked, oh, I do have kids. I don't know if they have photosensitivity. I never really tested. Do I really want it to risk doing that? And they know about it. Why? Because it was flagged after the fact. So who watched the movie, I know it's not a movie critic presentation, but so who watched the movie, there was so many ways that you can steal the same tell the same story without using the actual flashing. So this is stuff that you need to be looking at. And so far, I don't know of any tools that run accessibility look at it. There are tools individually that you can put a video and measure for photosensitivity on it. Yeah, this is it. Yeah, content check is look at what it's content-wise. This is stuff if we're looking at links and the links say click here, for example, or the title of the page that it's descriptive. I worked in an organization where every single news release, the title of the page was news release. So when you make a search, what do you get? You get like 25 results. All of these results is news release, news release, news release, and so on. So that's one thing to look at it, and then that's from an accessibility perspective, which is the right thing to do. But I mean, from a person with disability perspective, the title of the page is the very first piece of information that it's read to the screen reader. So when they open a page and it will tell them it's a news release, now they need to go to the content, start reading the content to know if this is the one that I'm looking at or no. So this is important. Another way that you can use it, I don't know about you, but I have multiple tabs open all the time. So if all my tabs have the exact same title, then sometimes it's hard to navigate from one to another. So this goes best practices, and it's kind of nice to have less annoying for every user, but then it can be a deal breaker for a person with disabilities. Yeah, so guided assessment, this is accessibility insight. This is one of the tools that I like. The way it's divided, it's not divided by like a success criteria per se, where you go success criteria, each success criteria. It doesn't sound like 1.1.1, 1.1.2. It is by kind of subject. So you see on the left side panel, it's by subject. So you see you have the keyboard one, and focus, landmark, and so on. So you look at the series test that you wanted to do. And when you start at the right side, it do give you a summary of all the tests. This is not done automatically. When you manually answer each of the section, it will gather a score for you, so you will be able to report on the assessment. So how it's look like, it's something like this. So this is for text alternative, for example. So you have visual helper you can turn on and off. So that means in your actual web page, you will see some visual indication where the images are. But also to give you a list of steps, what do you need to test for and why it's important. Then it prompts you a question that you go pass, fail for the different type of situation that you can find in a web page. So by answer those, it will give you a score at the end. So this is what I refer to as an assisted testing. So it's not manual check where you need to remember all these tests or go through a checklist. If you follow this one, you can save it and you'll continue with it. All right. The best test is actually use assistive technology for it. And the even better test is to involve person with disability with testing, right? So when you test, you do sometime usability testing for your product. I hope that's the case. So you need to involve person with disability when you do the usability testing because they are part of your audience. Mike did mention the number. It's a big number that you cannot put aside. Plus, when you take these numbers according to stat, how many person with disability are out there, if you add the situational disability and you add the temporary disability, then that number became huge. So what we're going to do now is look at 2 pages here. I want you to look at this page here and this version here.
Can everyone see the difference?
I'm switching from one page to another page. The
Serif and sans serif.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah, that's a fun difference. Other than that?
The title are different.
The title here is different?
There's an actual list styling for the list.
How do you know it's in styling list?
Because that one isn't indented, it just has dashes on the other side, but the other one is indented and has the points.
Okay. This is what you do, you have like designers in house actually. page, when I give a workshop about accessibility, the page roughly do look the same. I appreciate flagging the list. I'm gonna use CSS to make it sure it's look the exact the same thing, but they are the same, and I guess you guessed it, for the nature of the presentation we're doing, the code is completely different, right? So what we're gonna do now, and hopefully this is gonna work, is I'm going to turn on my
Poutine in town. 1. Image. Use the rotor to enable best poutine in town. 1. Image. Use the rotor to enable direct touch for this app.
Right. So, anyone own a screen reader? Only 2? 3? 4? Only 4? Yeah. Nobody have a phone? Smartphone? You all have a screen reader then, right? So be able to turn the screen reader on, you go in the accessibility setting, and on this slide, I believe these slides will be shared as well, but I mean, you can ask Google. But you go and you turn VoiceOver on, which is the screen reader, and this is how the page will look like. So I'm using the VoiceOver, which is a screen reader. An example, when I talked about situational and temporary disability, I'm not a screen reader user, so I use it for testing. So I'm not, I look at my screen, so I'm kind of cheating a little bit when I do the testing, but this has became for me extremely useful. I was traveling south, and when I arrived, I went to the beach right away, and I said, I'm going on the water. It was lots of waves, it was like 7 p.m. My wife told me, don't. First lesson is I need to listen to my wife, but that's separate. And I went in the water and I lost my glasses. Day 1 of 10 days vacation. And I need to communicate with my kids. I use screen reader all the time. Then I had this kind of awkward situation where I had to be very close to people at the bar to see if I remember you from the night before or not. I don't drink, but people thought I was drunk all the time. That being said, that was very useful for me, and that was a good example of a situational disability. So, first thing you need to do, you will use 2 finger to rotate, because what we're going to do is
Form controls. Audio links. Form controls. Direct touch. Audio destination. Edit. Characters. Direct touch. On. Words. Edit. Lines. Characters. Speaking rate. Words. 70%. Lines.
okay. So now it's
Speaking rate. 70%.
rate.
Containers. Speaking rate. Set 75%. 80%. Containers.
Faster.
Speaking rate. Set 75%. 80%. 85%. 80%. 75%. 70%. 65. 60%. 55%. 50%.
And then I'll navigate with the finger going left and right. So you guys, the screen is looking forward. I'm not looking at it. So what I need to do is just swipe.
Favorite shawarma in Ottawa. Wadaya shawarma. Favorite shawarma in Ottawa. Wadaya shawarma. Shawarma in Ottawa.
Okay, so say
Favorite shawarma in Ottawa.
Jungle.
Pita Mita. Shawarma jungle. Pita Mita.
So there's something
Maison
there
of
that's saying
shawarma.
weird less. I go back to the top.
Pita Meat Shawarma. Favorite Wadaya shawarma. Best poutine in town. Image.
I'm not sure what the poutine have to do with it. I mean, we're in Ottawa, but I don't know what's that there.
Wadaya shawarma.
Okay, what's a shawarma?
Best Wadaya shawarma.
I don't know what a favorite shawarma
Favorite
is.
shawarma in Ottawa.
I'm not sure what's happening here. So if I go to
Toolbar, tabs, button, tabs, booking.com, pay or show context menu.
turn it off so you're not getting
Voiceover off.
Here we go. So if we go to the second one.
Safari, best shawarma in Voiceover on. Safari, best shawarma in town. Heading level 1. Heading level 2.
Oh, okay.
What is a shawarma? Heading level 2. Shawarma is a warm. Pillowy pita wrapped around 10 spiced meat. It's layered with crisp veggies, tangy pickles, and a drizzle.
Anyone? Yes? They look the same, right? Except of the font? Yes?
The way the code was laid out in the back end, I'm guessing?
The way the code's laid out in the back end.
No, it's actually an image of text. So what we saw was not even text, it was an image of text, and the image of text was as decorative, because when I run an accessibility tool, it tells me there's an image missing and out. Is it alternative? Is it decorative? It's easier for me to say yes, doesn't give it a description, but it do look nice. But then the person wasn't able to read it, right? So we can continue.
Address, refresh, Page menu. Address. Refresh. Address. Page down where of shawarma. Bullet. It the ultimate favorite shawarma in Ottawa. Bullet. Shawarma Jungle. 1 of 3.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's because it's decorative, and I guess when it's decorative, the screen readers skip it right away, so they didn't even read it. So right here, you see, it tells me that there's a list, 1 item of 3. So I know there's 3 best shawarma listed in here, and when you go to
Where to find bullet. Feed bullet.
Maison.
Of where to find the best shawarma of
Maison, 3 sur 3.
of shawarma.
notice
List end.
it's
Maison,
set in a
3 sur
different
3.
tone because I put a language attribute saying that now this is in French. So now the screen reader read it in French for me. This is why it goes maison. Otherwise, it will be saying maison of shawarma in English. It goes with the image here, so I have an image
Of shawarma. Where to find the best shawarma in Ottawa. Heading level 2.
So it's
Downtown Ottawa on Rideau Street. Image.
With the version
Nons.
that I showed
Ribot.
earlier, the actual description was a very long description about what we're saying on the page here. Like there's a street, there's road, there's so on. This is where the question all the time comes, can artificial intelligence describe the image for me because it's can? So we actually tested. There are some tools that screen reader user, they can describe what's in the image. And when they looked at it, they actually described the image as, for a very weird reason, they focused on the left corner of the image at the top of the building, which is we see the half of the word Simons in green, and the description was like it wanted to be super intelligent, saying it seemed that the image is corrupted because I cannot read the whole title of the building. They thought that that was the focus there. Then we used another tool, and the other tool was focused on Scotiabank. I don't know if you see the Scotiabank in there, but it's in the back. It's red in the back for some reason. Regardless, the actual alternative text, what it was, what it's called, where it is exactly. So
Voiceover
so usually when I make
Voiceover
that
off.
test, I have actually, I do teach at Algonquin College, and I have 2 colleagues, one person legally blind and one with low vision, so both of them use this website. And in this page, even if they look the same, there is many errors. One image that is decorative, that it's not decorative, so it's skipped. One image that have the wrong alternative text. A test that is not a test. A heading structure that is not enough. A language change that it's not there. And there's 7 different errors on the page. So now if I take that exact same page and I run wave on it, it's just show me there's 1 error. So this is why manual testing is extremely important. It was a very good start. When I run it in here, it tells me that I do have an error, and that error is I don't have a language for the page. And funny enough, that error did not cause any issue for the screen reader because of the browser. You know, have you visited the website sometime, like it's in French, but you browse it in English, and it's asks you, do you want me to translate? So the browser know what are your settings. So by default, the screen reader figured out it was an English page because everything set up is in English. So even if that was an error, it did not cause an issue. But everything else that was not flagged, the 7 other errors, were actual real barriers for that. So I'll hand it back to Mike.
All right, excellent. And where are we here? So, a few things, we're running out of time, so I'm going to go, I think that listening to screen, the idea of hearing screen readers and understanding how screen readers work is really important, but I'm going to keep this as short as I can. So we've made a lot of improvements in Drupal's accessibility over the last 15 years, starting with Drupal 7, where we focused on WCAG 2.0. In Drupal 8, we worked on ATAG, which is the Authoring Tool Accessibility Guidelines. This is a standard, a W3C standard that it was built in Canada, but is overlooked generally. And we'd have a lot fewer issues if it was something that we actually were building towards ATAG and thinking about the authoring experience, the authoring tools. Recently, we've been looking in the Drupal community, looking at area. I think a lot of times at the beginning, we were a little bit too enthusiastic about applying area when we shouldn't have been. And so trying to remove area from places where it isn't necessary or isn't helpful. What is the first rule of area? don't use area. So keep that in mind. We're also trying to enhance some other pieces as part of this. How many people here have heard of editorially? Editorially is a really great module that adds a lot of accessibility into the core of CK Editor, and so the checking for accessibility is as part of Drupal as a Drupal module has improved a lot with not with CK Editor 5, but with editorially. CK Editor 5, there's a really excellent module called Ali First that was built by John Gunderson. That was all built around CK Editor 4, but I'm trying to go off and revive that and trying to get people to take up building a CK Editor 5 module that does a plugin for CK Editor that does the same kind of thing, that makes it easier for people to prioritize and understand how accessibility should be for content editors. The Drupal community is quite large. If you go to any Drupal web page, there's a link at the bottom that says stuff about accessibility. It goes to information about our coding standards. Those are draft coding standards still, but there's still sort of recommendations about how to go off and build your website for accessibility. Drupal a couple years ago won the GAD pledge. Does anyone here know what GAD is? GAD's coming up on May 20. When is GAD? It's the third Thursday of the month. But it's coming up soon because we're in May now. But the GAD pledge was an effort that the GAD Foundation produced to try and highlight open source projects that are pushing accessibility ahead. And we've made some improvements because of the GAD pledge to try and push us to be even better. There's also a lot of sessions on camps. It's wonderful that this is the second session at this camp talking about accessibility. That is not unusual for Drupal camps and Drupal cons around the world. Also there's ongoing efforts to improve the accessibility of the events themselves. So I thought for my first presentation, we did not organize to put the captions on in our second presentation, but there's all the stuff that we can learn, there's all the stuff that we can do better to be better prepared. And the more you think the conference organizers and conference speakers are thinking about accessibility, the better it is. There is this Drupal AI initiative, and this is also an interesting opportunity to think about the framework of accessibility for Drupal, because AI is both an amazing tool for good and an amazing tool for evil. It is an amplification of what we can do, which is both. But this is a good time to be involved, because if you're not so familiar with Drupal or contributions, it can help build your confidence to try and say, how do I submit that first bug? How do I test one of these patches? How do I take a screenshot and share it in the Drupal community? AI can be helpful for that. And also trying to make sure that people with disabilities are more engaged with these community efforts and are speaking up and talking about these issues and saying, this is a bug we'd like to have fixed. And there's people in the community like myself who will try and help bring you in and find ways to take the bugs that you see and find ways to address them so they can be addressed at the source, and you could fix 1 million web pages at once by going off and fixing this one problem that affects all of us. And that's something it's an amazingly addictive thing to do if you're interested in ways to go off and spend your time. Fixing 1 million websites is a good way to begin. The changes with AI are happening quick, and this is a good time to get involved in order to scale it, to learn more, and also find people you can learn from. And that's it for us. Do you have questions? Excellent. Go ahead.
Yes, I was wondering, what do you think about overlays? Are they of any value?
Oh, they're the best. Go ahead. So I created I was involved in writing the web almanac this year and last. Last year I had do people know what the web almanac is? It's an annual snapshot of the health of the web. And in this case, it was 17 million web pages were assessed for various different issues, including accessibility. We looked at the overlays and the use of overlays around the world, and tried to break it down into a couple different categories, because it's not like all overlays are evil, but the use of them and how they're sold as a way to fix accessibility problems once and for all is problematic. So the European the European Union has come out and said that this is something that overlays are not a solution for accessibility. I'm definitely in agreement with that. There's also something called the overlay fact sheet, which I'm a signatory of, which Carl Groves went off and started a few years back. But there are potentially good ways to use overlays as well. Like an overlay is basically anything that is a temporary fix that is providing, if you have a legacy system that you're not going to be able to maintain, and it's going to cost a lot of money to upgrade this legacy tool that you're in the process of decommissioning, but you've got an accessibility issue with it, that is the right time to go up and say, I want to provide a piece of JavaScript that fixes this problem in our legacy system and addresses it. So that is a good space for that. Or if it's something where you've got a lot of issues to fix and you can fix some of them quickly with an overlay, and then as part of your mediation process, you can remove those JavaScript hacks in order to go off and to address it. And there's also the kinds of overlays that actually do things like provide user personalization. Like how do you make it easier for people to select dark mode, or to make larger fonts, or to have more impactful signage. Those are things that I think can be helpful for that. I've got a question at the back, and then also Toufic, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, no, just depending on the overlay as well. If I have an overlay that has some sort of a screen reader in there, and they sell it as, oh, if your user is blind, now with this they will be able to read the page. Well, news for them, they already use a screen reader, so they're not going to come to that website to learn how that narrator works, and then it's going to conflict with the screen reader. So there's, depending what type of tools or function that is provided in there. But in general, I totally agree with Mike. I also signed that document. It cannot be a solution to make your stuff accessible.
Yes, in the shadow.
Hi, yeah, I had a question. How can you leverage the accessibility features with Drupal or tools that are available to take a huge problem of PDFs or Word documents or Office products that are attachments that are not accessible and help alleviate the problem, maybe through conversion or through some other mitigation? Like a lot of institutions have a backlog of attachments that are not accessible that have to be accessible. How do the tools?
I think we have a follow-up question here, and then I will get to that.
Not my problem, but my own organization had that own problem. Where we had a whole bunch of PDFs that, they weren't accessible. They had to be remediated. But they had like almost 1,000. So what we basically did is that we didn't make them accessible. You had to request it. You had to click a button and follow a process. So it wasn't publicly available. And we made it very clear we're working on remediation. What we're requesting is an unaccessible version of this document. It will be made accessible in the future, though, so check that. But that kind of gateway be a solution, or would it be considered an overlay?
I mean, I think that there are ways to go off and to address this, and those kinds of approaches to go off and to request that a document becomes accessible is useful. I think the biggest thing for PDFs, where I'm concerned, is just like if you're in a sinking boat and you've got holes in the boat, the first thing you do is patch the holes, right? And we're not patching the holes. The UK government did a great deal to go off and say, do not use PDFs. Use PDFs as a last resort. And the Canadian government and other governments around the world have, like, the US government almost did that in N2408, which is what the memo from the OMB a while back, but under another administration. But the first thing is to say don't use PDFs and to discourage people from providing PDFs. It can also be useful to go off and to ask people to attach the source documents when you're uploading it, because part of the problem with remediation is you're not working with the source documents. You're working with some half-assed, replication of the source documents that you need to sort of work around and go off and address. So having the source documents can be useful as well in order to improve them. But also there's groups called LocalGov Drupal that have an AI implementation built in that will basically turn your PDF into a series of book pages under Drupal, so that there's a way to go off and use AI to do that conversion. There's a number of other organizations that have done this as well, including the Dutch government. They had an open source tool to do PDF migration as well. So AI can be helpful in this. But the biggest challenge is actually just going off and getting people to stop doing it, because it is far easier to produce a PDF than it is to remediate a PDF. and it's just technical debt. Cynthia?
Just to check, because we also have thousands and thousands of PDFs, and you often have a team that has the knowledge, you have a team that has understanding, but the content creators and the people that approve it, be it TBS or whoever it is, the president of your university or corporation, they all like the business world like PDF. That is all changing in AI. Leverage the AI. They respond to that better. If it's a barrier to a screen reader, it's a barrier to ChatGPT and be properly tagged. It's a barrier to your search engine optimization. So sometimes you have to pull not just at the heartstrings, but at the business and logic.
If we have to do this for AI, so like, you know,
Well,
yeah.
I mean, it's sad,
It's true.
but that can often be leveraged so that people are generating and web by default, so it can be picked up by AI. So there shouldn't be a PDF document at all.
Another approach that the U.S. Access Board promoted last year was the idea of building print-friendly HTML and having that be structurally trying to favor the use of print-friendly HTML so that people are having a better print experience, so they don't feel like they need to have a PDF. Because right now I think a lot of people use a PDF because when they look at printing out a web page, it looks horrible. So they'll do a PDF instead because that's how they're going to consume the content.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons of why we have that is all these kind of PDF and so on, because we used to say that the primary version need to be accessible and the secondary version are not accessible. So we will have, especially when we talk in Government of Canada context where there's been accessibility standards for a while now, is if you have an HTML version of that document, then there is no worry about that PDF. But this is changing starting next year. Any document need to be accessible, even if it starts with a PDF as well. But I think not from a Drupal perspective, I'm not an expert in Drupal, but when I see organization faced with this huge debt of documents that are not accessible, I think is the organization need to have a strategy and actual real discussion and have buy-in from management that this is need to be achieved, because there's multiple ways that can be fixed. Accessible in demand, I saw that some organization will look at it, say if, okay, there's a threshold of date or older document and so on, and that's a question of resource. It does not mean because one PDF it's only viewed 10 times a year and one 3,000 times a year, that means this one need to be accessible, the other one not, because you can be discriminating against others, but you still need to put like kind of a strategy in place for that. And as Mike mentioned, this is because it's been an accumulation of doing stuff the wrong way, and now we certainly need to have it fixed.
Okay, I don't actually know what time there is, but at some point they're going to kick us off the stage. Do we have one last question, or should we call it the end? Okay, one last question. I like the website that's just say no. There's or should I use a carousel? That's what it is. It's should I use a carousel.com? And I think carousels are largely there to appease management and power holders and government agencies who want to have their pet project on the front page, and that's why they can't agree on what should be first. So they're like, oh, we'll just throw it all in a carousel, and yeah. So I think it's just bad organizational planning and processes.
What we did usability testing, and we look at the numbers. This is way back. We don't do any more carousel, as long what I remember. But we looked at it is you'll have like 100% view of the first slide. It dropped down to like 40%, then the 10%. So we use that argument. Then sure, I will put a carousel for you, but 100% will see it, and then it reduced now. Then everybody fought for the first slide. Then we go like perfect. Then everyone is in the first slide, which is everyone on the same page. There is no carousel.
All right. Well, thank you all very much, and hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon.